Hello and welcome, episode 47 of the Senteon and CIS webinar series. Almost 52 weeks of straight episode content. I mean, it's amazing, guys, right? We love doing this.
It doesn't get any better.
It's funny. Our background talk for everyone. We were just talking about entrepreneurship, all of the content you make, and all of the time that puts in. And at the end of the day, all we really want to talk about are the stories. So the slides are just background to the incredible things JP Kesey is going to present today. And we're very excited to have you. I will introduce you here in a moment. But just like every week, let's take care of some housekeeping. So I'm going to hop over to my screen here. We do have ChannelCon hosted by CompTIA next week. So me and Brad Powell from Threat Captain will be doing a little hype video at the end of this week. I am also very excited to share. We'll be doing a automation webinar with Jared Brantley over at Raven Automation. So we're going to really dive into why manual processes might be a little bit more vulnerable than the beautiful automation we should all be doing. And I'm most excited about, I will be doing a hardening workshop over at ChannelCon. So if you want to put your manual hardening skills to the test or just learn what hardening is in general, this webinar, or sorry, my first not webinar, this in-person workshop will have it all. So really excited to do that. Would love to have you guys check it out. The registration is in the comments. And again, for those who are joining us for the first time or just learning about Senteon, we are a hardening solution for workstations, servers, and browsers. We will perform the remediation on over 1,200 settings, as well as the monitoring, the reporting, the change tracking, anything you can really wish for. And best of all, our webinars, we do have a repository you can access straight on our website, or you can head over to our YouTube page and see that. I also try to do as many blogs as possible. So for the readers who like these a little bit more, those will be available as well. And as for the gift to any of our webinar listeners, you can click this login button right here. That will take us to a sign up page, and you can access for free our catalog. The big thing that I want to shout out as important here, and shout out Rich and his CIS organization, is they provide a ton of free information on these settings. Senteon ingests this information, and we put it into a very dynamic table. So if you are just now learning about these settings and you're joining the webinar to learn, you can also check them out here, and you can read about the description, the rationale, the impact, the machine key if you want to do this manually, right? And all of that information is free via CIS, just organized here. The other thing I like to show is that these settings are not just best practice, they are also required per regulation. So you can always see exactly why, clicking into these tables, and they'll show you why they are required. And the very last thing I'll talk about, and before we go back to what we're all here for, is the assessments. So you will be gifted some free assessments for your usage to see where you currently sit. And if you want to go all the way, you can also improve that security posture with the Senteon automation. All right, with that, we will get back to the show. So let's get out of that. And we'll dive into it. JP, F1 Information Technologies, entrepreneur and friend of Senteon. I mean, we got to meet in person at the CyberQP show, and that was an absolute blast. But JP, please introduce yourself for a moment.
Well, it was a blast because I got to meet you. It wasn't because we were drinking or anything, right? So,
beers and golf is hard not to have fun.
It is. JP Kesey with F1 Information Technologies, F1 IT for short. We're a MSP, kind of hybrid MSP out of Fort Worth, Texas. And I mean, what else you want to know? I mean, I've been in this industry probably for 30 plus years, doing things I probably shouldn't have been when I was, just about 13 or 14 years old. There's a few stories there that I could tell that the businesses are out of business now, but not because of things I did.
And you have shared some of those great stories in other webinars you've done. So we may have to drop some links to those other stories because they're great. I mean, full transparency, we've really maintained our relationship since that. And you've been a little bit of a mentor to me with your entrepreneur experience, getting me better involved with your peer group. I mean, you've been a champion to early stage companies like myself. So don't downplay this introduction, brother.
Well, those are very kind words, and thank you very much. I don't know that I deserve them all the time, but one of the things that I learned early on was I was intentionally humbled and let plenty of our client partners mentor to my business partner and I as we were techs. And so the the idea that we needed to have some mentors ourselves was something that we knew early on, and we took everybody up on it and listened to them, even as hard as a lot of it was. We wouldn't be here today. We started off with just the two of us back in the early 2002, incorporated in 2003, and grew organically to now where we've got 20 of us now on the team and still growing strong, and I didn't have any formal education in the background. I've learned by on the job training basically, and listening to very smart people like Rich and others, and even yourself, Zach, has taught me, something or two. So.
Yeah, those are
that's
kind
amazing.
words.
I'd like to just add on to that in terms of the value of mentorship, which is so powerful. Way back when my first job out of college was with Apple Computer, and I was very blessed to begin my career there. And as a young guy, I was assigned a mentor. His name is Christian Klaus. He lives in the European Union. And I was only at Apple for a few years, but Chris and I have been lifelong friends, and he has been a mentor for my entire career and still is my mentor to this day at almost 60 years old. So the power of mentorship is amazing. And if you don't have a mentor, try to find one. And maybe JP's your man.
You got time, right?
Time is something I've learned I have to buy back. So
Yeah.
Not being greedy on the financial side of things has really benefited. So we give back as much as we take in, as at least what we try to do. So, and if not by financial reasons, at least by time. And I've learned this a lot and we could have a whole webinar on this, for at some point. So just mentorship alone. So Rich, that's good to hear that you had that and you're still friends with them. I am also friends with about a half a dozen men and women that have kind of really helped me through the years.
You have to. So important.
I think my favorite from the webinar we keep talking about with your mentorship was the magician shop you worked at. I would love to get some close up magic at some point, but let's keep that for another webinar. You mentioned you did start, from experience, hands-on, no formal education. So it sounds like you really started with the hands-on technical work, but from what I've learned today and since I've known you, it seems like you really transferred to that operations, customer facing. So what's your day to day? And if I'm right about that transition, what did that look like branching away from the tech?
It was a little hard at first, because I liked, kind of to break things and then try to fix them. And I did a lot of that. And, back in the early 90s, my mom's side of the family was all in the trades. She had about 11 brothers and sisters. And so I kind of got forced into being the nerd that I was, to switching everybody over into electronic accounting systems, which is kind of where I started in inventory systems and some of the trades and stuff. So I learned real quickly when I was using an old Commodore 64 dial-up where you put the handset on the thing, and getting into certain people's inventory systems that had it wide open, why they shouldn't do that. And so it gave me a little bit of an edge to go, okay, we need to make sure we're doing these things as well, because you don't want your financials getting out.
JP, so, you're going back too far.
Yeah.
Zach wasn't born yet then.
I'm smiling and nodding, but these are things I've only heard about.
He has no idea what you're talking about right now.
So there's a good book by Kevin Mitnick called Ghost in the Wire that you should read that will give you a lot of historical memoirs of things that we did back in the day.
There you go, Zach. You got homework.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a really good book. And if you listen to it on 1.5, the person reading the book for you, if you do Audible, it sounds really fun.
I love doing that.
So, but yeah, so the transition was really, we needed it. We were growing. It's one of the things that I hope to get to do a webinar soon on, is for up and coming, let's call them, engineers that are wanting to start their own business. They got that bit by that entrepreneurial bug, and helping them understand some different things that they need to look at and kind of giving back from that. But my special case was my business partner and I wholeheartedly have a very strong faith, and so I know God put us together, and we've been partners for 24 years,
Wow.
25 years now, and we get into arguments, but we always realize that the other one, if he's super passionate about it, then we kind of back off and we go into full on support, 1,000% support, whether we agree with it or not. And so we decided, probably about 8-10 years ago, that for us to continue to grow and work on the business, we needed somebody who's going to be less technical and really kind of be that face and kind of be out there and really embrace and try to lead this company into something bigger and better. And I guess because I have a more open personality, which there's a story there. He's more of an introvert. He was really good at the integrating and operational side of things, and he's just a super smart engineer as well. That I just naturally fell into this position, and that's kind of the way we've been doing it. And the day-to-day activities, to answer that question, that's a little bit of a tough one. Some days I'm just so drained that I can't even think straight, right? Because I'm just so on all the time. Zach, you especially know this. And sometimes we just need some downtime just to sit there and think about new ideas. We implemented EOS last year, and one of the things that in the book called Rocket Fuel that kind of really demonstrates and explains the visionary integrator role. So the integrator is supposed to have a lot of ideas every month, and that's something I'm not short of. And he keeps me in check. So even though I may be the CEO in the legal side of things, he's still my boss and keeps the business running. But that's kind of how the whole leadership side and how I transitioned out of the.
It's amazing.
Out of that role,
entrepreneurship's hard. I think everyone knows that, right? Fair statement. Yes. I mean, it's a lot of people have really great ideas, but to be able to execute and sustain a business is not easy. So congrats to you, JP, and as well you, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. First time I really got to know JP and his business, it's easy to reflect because I feel me and you fell into similar roles. Because the idea to start a company is one thing, but you have to have multiple ideas after the company. I want to try this. I want to try that. And Henry, our CEO, I constantly push the needle, asking for new things, new gadgets, new automation, because it's something I want to try. And even though I know some of the setup load is going to fall on him, it's like it'll open up my time. Trust me, you want me to try this.
Well, and we all need, in the entrepreneurial side of things, it seems like most of them are the visionary side that kind of gets things started and gets things rolling. You need those boundaries or those people that will put those boundaries and kind of keep you in check a lot of times. And so that's why I like that EOS model and just that whole idea of having somebody as a mentor, being able to keep me in check with my ideas.
And you can also be an entrepreneur without starting a company. I mean, you can work within an organization and be the guy that is bringing the new ideas and, the fresh ideas and the new business models within an existing organization. So there's more than one way to be an entrepreneur, whatever works for you and, where your interests lie.
Awesome. There's a good book called 360 Degree Leader by Maxwell. And it tells you that in my day, we called them the mailroom boys at the bottom of the ladder, the organizational ladder. Even in being a mailroom boy, you can lead the CEO of a company.
Absolutely.
Easily. So
awesome. Well, I know the format.
Speaking of boundaries,
sorry, I know we could go on and on because again, it's just fun talking about the topics we care about, but we need to care about configurations. So I will have to transfer us on over to today's topic, where we will be diving into Active Directory and safe browsing with Chrome hardening. So
let's give Bobby a shout out though in the chat.
Absolutely, Bobby. Absolutely. So let's dive into
Bobby's in here. Awesome.
Bobby Guerrero. You got the shout outs from the host. So let's love that. So let's hop into the presentation here today. We did do a little bit of pre-show on this, and you had quite the story on needing to communicate this preventative security and bringing security top of mind to the actual customers. It's not something that they should just accept and have done. It's something you actually need to introduce to them, specifically frameworks. Could you kind of talk about how CIS sits, and is that your framework of choice? And how do you talk about frameworks with your partners, customers rather?
Oh, so this question is definitely for me, I bet you. At least what we talked about before. But Rich, I need your help in here anytime you feel
I
like
got
I'm
you,
not
bro.
doing or
No, I
saying
got
things
you.
quite the right way. So the idea of a framework is kind of like we talked about a minute ago, those bumper guards, if you will, those boundaries, and implementing some safeguards in place of your digital network, your digital data, your day-to-day activities of your operations. And unfortunately, a lot of times, because the education around digital data has happened so fast in the use of computers over the last 30 years, you it's grown so much that the end users don't necessarily understand what's the big deal. Why can't we just do this? This is like pencil and paper. Who cares? Of what the security needs to be or the boundaries to the use of any of this stuff. And we all see time and time again, through fear and uncertainty, that that the bad guys are out there, and there's some really smart ones out there, and they're recruiting every single day, and they're coming up with new and newer ways. AI is a prime example of how they're utilizing AI faster than what we can keep up with on how to defend against it a lot of times. So these safeguards that we're going to talk about today are essential. The framework that we chose to, at very bare minimum, provide to all of our client partners is CIS. And we're still in the process of implementing them. It's not a just throw it on and go, because a lot of these are extremely disruptive.
Yeah, it's a continuous effort for
Yeah.
sure. And, shout out to the CIS controls as the policy framework that CIS puts out in the marketplace. And why it's really important is it gives you a chance to assess your maturity level against really what's important, because the CIS controls are organized in a fashion that are designed to help you get the biggest bang for your effort, whether that's new product or just doing basic settings or things like education. It gives your organization a chance to see where you fit in the maturity scale and where you have work to do. MSPs love the controls too, because they can do an assessment for an organization that maybe they're working with currently, or maybe that they're looking to bring on board as a company. And if, by going through the CIS controls and sort of seeing that maturity level, you can understand where you need to do work, where the exposure is, and what priority to do that work for the best leverage and the best bang for your spend in time and money.
Yeah. And you said one thing that I really want to highlight as well, JP. You mentioned, just turning on all these CIS controls. It's going to break. Are you telling me this can't just be a template and one size fits all, JP? That makes no sense.
I am absolutely saying that. And one of the other things to add to what Rich was saying, the security and following a framework, and pick one, right? So CIS is the one we pick, but following one is essential, because in the MSP world, I hear it, I've heard it for several years now. We're all having trouble getting good quality engineers and techs in to help run our businesses and to help our client partners. Enabling this security helps reduce the amount of time that they need, because now they're not fighting and chasing fires as much. There's some boundaries, like I said, around the day-to-day activities and operations of businesses that's needed. So,
and I totally agree with that, JP, too. Obviously, I'm just a little bit biased towards the CIS controls framework, but if that's not your thing, pick your favorite framework and get after it. And then there's tools like Senteon that can do crosswalks to everything, every great thing that exists, because there's a ton of overlap in each.
And we would not provide that without CIS telling us the answers. So now that makes a lot of sense, JP. And I do want to dive into presenting frameworks to the customer and how involved
Sure.
they are. But let's cover some settings first. Let's make sure we budget our time, because there are times where I sometimes don't do that. So
No.
let's dive into the first setting here. So we have allow automatic sign-in to Microsoft Cloud identity providers is set to enabled. So we did have some opinions in the pre-show with anything that's automatic sign-in. But JP, what comes to mind when you're reading this setting?
So this is one that I'm glad Rich is on here to kind of push back. I don't know that I like this one as much. I've seen too much, so the automatic logging into anything scares the crap out of me, to be frank. And so it I can understand it if you have some additional tools or solutions in place that allow that ease and non-disruptiveness and still stay secure. But the idea to allow something like this to happen when the threat actor can get moved into a network and then move laterally and still operate things in the background with automatic sign-ins kind of worries me a little bit. So, Rich, I want to hear your
Yeah,
opinion on this one.
I think the essence of this particular setting is it's an attempt to really kind of manage identity access in a lot of ways. So I think the thought process is if you're logging in automatically to what is set up as a trusted system, that less things can potentially go wrong. However, things can always go wrong. The wrong guy gets in, some of your machine gets taken over, and Zach is sitting in front of it versus JP, and you have this automatic sign in, so it can have an effect potentially as to allow someone to get privileges that they should not have. So I think overall it's a good setting. I think it has the right intentions, but like everything else, things have to be carefully managed, and that's where your MSP can really help you out.
Let's expand on that, and JP. I'll set you up for a story because I'm sure you have one. I feel MSPs constantly even do have to choose their battles and choose which hill they want to die on. So something like this, where the ease of use may be pretty great so that they don't have to sign into their cloud identity provider manually every time, and the automatic saves them a whole 15 seconds to the start of their every day. I mean, do you have any stories where you could share you had something you absolutely needed the client to do, but they weren't willing to listen? Is that a hill you die on, or is that something you were willing to just move from?
I what I did was I utilized it in a scenario to where so we deal a lot with regulated industries. So the story that I have is revolving around a doctor, a provider, if you will, and most providers are already stretched thin on their time. So anything that's going to disrupt their operations is going to be met with a big, hey, we don't want to implement this. So this one we do utilize, we do enable it, like you said, and we do use Senteon to do that. The reason that we go ahead and do it is because it gives us the ability to show our value add as an MSP and say, look, this is best practices. This is going to do this, but we're going to put some other safeguards in place to help you. So now they look at us as, hey, this guy's really looking out for our business operations, not just scaring the crap out of us because there's big, bad, ugly guys out there that are trying to get in there. He's trying to really, or the team is trying to really keep my operations moving forward. And so I use this as a precursor to say, hey, here's why we need to implement Windows Hello or some of these other things that can help you go straight into the cloud providers and all the solutions that are out there while still keeping this enabled properly and keeping them secure. So,
Yep. No, that's perfect. And we do need to shout out Bobby's comment here. He's obviously
feeling it.
He's obviously familiar with a lot of these configurations. So auditscripts.com is a great resource if you've never heard of this. I know Senteon in our backend did leverage a lot of the audit scripts work when it was up to date. I know we did use that as we could. But yeah, that is a great resource. Shout out Bobby on sharing that with the community.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. I have personal experience with audit scripts and fabulous tooling, and something it's free as pointed out, and it's very worthwhile. So if you're not familiar, check it out.
Awesome. All right, let's hop over to this next setting here. So ensure allow download restrictions is it set to enabled block malicious downloads. This one's intuitive. Of course, we don't want anything malicious downloading, but let's talk about how these settings will mitigate the risk of a user doing something they shouldn't be by accident, right? I mean, I can't imagine a user or any employee of yours would intentionally download something malicious. So why is this setting important to make sure it's in place?
Well, for us, it means that we're protecting the end user from clicks that they think that they're downloading something good, but they're not. And rings especially true for some of the clients that have a DevOps team that they're utilizing, and they're trying to add on extensions. They're trying to add on things to test it out and not realizing what's going on in the background when they do so. The idea of being able to secure that right away is, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. There's a few.
Yeah, we were talking pre-show a bit about AI and the impacts of AI in different areas, and this is another area where AI is able to mask malicious things very effectively from the untrained eye or even the trained eye. But if you have this type of setting enabled, rather than just kind of taking a look at it, yeah, that looks good, let's go. The software is going to do an evaluation and help you protect yourself against things that may look okay, may seem okay, but are definitely not okay. So it's important.
I think without saying the word, you were describing a fish. I mean, this setting sounds like it could potentially stop an end client from accidentally clicking a fish, or if they do click the fish, it stops it from at least the executable download. I mean, phishing is still something talked about today and something you talk with your clients. Is that correct? Is that something MSPs are still working on?
Every day, all day long. And we test them. We utilize different phishing solutions, and we're always trying to get better at disguising an email or disguising a link to a website that they commonly go to and creating a fake page. And so
so are the bad guys.
Yeah. So, and they're much better and have much more resources than we do.
Right.
Absolutely. That's just something I like to emphasize with these CIS benchmarks. They are preventative policies. They are preventative security measures. So we are accepting bad things might happen. These will mitigate the damages. And Rich, I heard you make fun last week, but my favorite word, right? Reduce the blast radius, right? That is what these settings are all.
I wasn't making fun of you.
Giving me a friendly shout out. But no, absolutely spot on. Great explanation here. Let's head over to the next one here. And I think we have a level 2. We do. So as a quick reminder for everyone in the audience, CIS do break these recommendations from level 1 and level 2 on the Chrome browser. Level 1 is recommended for everyone that's a business that they should be doing this. Level 2 is known to be a little bit more disruptive, might take an extra conversation with the client, or it may just take a internal conversation with yourself. Is this hill worth dying on? This setting is known to cause issues. Is it going to bring me enough security benefit for me to bring this to the customer? Because these are just recommendations.
I feel like this slide is a good example of that, Zach.
It's a good example. This is actually a very good example. So the setting here, allow proceeding from the SSL warning page is set to disabled. So it sounds like this is not going to allow you to proceed if this setting is enabled. JP, talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, part of those phishing and pen testing that we do will create these fake pages. And I don't want to sit there and spend a whole lot of money on an SSL cert to see if they're going to click through it or whatnot. So the bad guys are as well. So we don't want to necessarily allow them the easy access to our end users and compromising networks and computers. So again, this is another one of those no-brainers that has saved, I can almost assure you, has saved the bacon of many of our clients.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're ultimately, a lot of these settings are just protecting users from themselves, So, the warning comes up, it's like, man, I'm going for it. I need that content. Boom. And then you're in a bad situation. So we're just kind of limiting that.
This is like if you were walking around a neighborhood and you see a terrifying house, right? It's going to say, hey, do not enter the scary house. There are bad things inside. Do you want to give them the option to enter the house?
I'll even add to this that there was one particular instance several years ago that a client of ours was using, had used this one solution for years and years and years, and they did not update their SSL, and they weren't able to get to the site because we had this enabled. And they called us up and said, "Hey, are you blocking us?" I said, "No, their SSL is They ended up didn't even know that their site had become compromised, and so this notified that particular solution, that vendor, that hey, they needed to do a little checking. They found it, they fixed it right away, and they got things got going. It was a domain hijack, is what it was. But still, the idea there is that it helped the vendor as well. So not only the client, but it'll help vendors. And it's a good way to vet vendors. Think about this. If you're looking at different vendors and different solutions, and you go with a vendor that you go to their website and it doesn't have an SSL cert on it, and you can't get to it to just even see basically what's running, you may not want to use that vendor.
Hard pass.
Hard.
No, those attacks still continue. There's a recent attack right now in the past 2 weeks that's been going on for a while, but it has to do with DNS certs. And a Chinese organization that is putting out DNS capability that bad guys just love and use, and they're getting shut down right now.
Yep. Now, I feel like I've shared. Oh, go ahead, JP. You got something?
I was going to say, I heard a guy speak he was with the 4Es Society, or whatever they call those things. I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit, but he was talking about SSL certs and quantum computing, and the ability to break SSL certs is going to go from years down to minutes.
Oh, no.
And so, this is one more thing that will help protect that to some degree and make sure that you're validating where you're going.
JP, you've been around for a long time. Do you remember pre-SSL days? I do. Zach doesn't.
SSL's everywhere.
It's like, but when they first came in, I was like, really? This is a thing now? I can get on board with this one.
So I feel like I've shared more stories than usual, but you're setting me up for some good learnings we've actually had over at Senteon. And one of the things you mentioned was settings like this can call out other vendors or other applications, from being out of date or not able to handle the CIS recommendation. That's actually something we see pretty common with our learning mode Senteon offers, is saying, hey, we determined if you change this setting, it'll break an application on your device, right? And some applications require you to go against the CIS recommendation. I won't say company names, but something that has to do with UAC behavior that would elevate privileges, right? CIS does recommend to disable having the ability to elevate privileges.
We generally are not fans of people elevating privileges without an orderly process, but that's just us.
So if you disable this ability completely, that entire application will break, right? It requires that to run.
It's called a bad application, Zach. And, just like your previous story where, that other company had something that worked great for a long, long, long time. And that's great. Things are great when they work, but when they don't, they don't. So
Rich is biased. If it can't follow all the CIS benchmarks, it doesn't make it bad. That's why we didn't say the company name. Rich would have been too mean. So, but the flip side of that as well, working with Matt Lee and the CIS working group, another, we'll call it window we were looking at is the application able to run 100% to the what it's supposed to do on a CIS hardened box or a CIS compliant box. So that's kind of that fourth dimension that we were looking at when we were creating these CIS controls to vendor mappings. Like, is it really a CIS focused solution if it doesn't work on a CIS box? That's something that's going to be hard. And I do think vendors will need to take consideration, is my own platform able to work on CIS if I'm plugging CIS, right? So wanted to call that out because we find stuff that if you harden your box, it will break quite often.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Enough of that.
For good reasons.
For good reason. So let's go to this next one here. We are going to be talking about disable proceeding from the safe browsing warning page is set to enabled. Another beautiful GPO example where disabled is in the name and we are enabling this, but that is actually disabling this. So we are not allowing you to proceed from the warning page, is what this is saying. But JP, why would we not want to leave that?
Oh my gosh.
This is
For the same reasons before that we talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
people ignore pages all the time, and it's good that they can't click through and just keep going. I mean, we want them to at least stop and pause for a moment, which is what we all need to do more of. And say, wait a minute, let me read this. What is this really saying right here? So,
well, Zach and probably most of the audience know I'm special, right? So that doesn't apply to me, right? Let's go.
If there's bad guys on the other side of the door, I know that. I won't open it. We don't need to keep that door locked for me. I know not to open it, and I'll never open that door by accident. I'm smarter than the configuration. So you're exactly right. This is making sure we're just inhibiting users from causing them their own pain, right?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Dylan, for the shout out on that. So the next setting here, require site isolation for every site is set to enabled. So when I read this the first time, I thought it was going to be a level 2, but I was surprised a little bit to see this is a level 1. But after understanding the setting a little bit more, it did make sense. But why don't we want sites to be all bundled together and isolate them from each other?
Stealing data, accessing things that they're not supposed to, cross-site attacks that could happen. Which do. I mean, Matt Lee, you mentioned Matt Lee earlier. He's demonstrated a couple of times on how that actually can take place a lot easier than what you think. And so again, this is one of those things this is one of the reasons why I love CIS controls as a baseline for any of the regulated industries is you're doing nothing but protecting the end user from themselves, protecting the network from being down, from being ransomed, from being exploited in some sort of way. These are common enablements that need to happen. So,
yeah, by not following this setting, you're just making if a bad guy does get into the network, you're just making their job easier. So just don't make it easy for the bad guys. Is always a good idea.
And whenever I can, I try to relate this to like a real world here. So this is like basically putting two people who absolutely hate each other into the same room together, right? Why would you intentionally put them in the same room if there's an option to put them in separate rooms? All right, so I thought that was a good one. I just thought of it, and I was like, I'm going to say it.
That's good. I make sure
that's all like something Matt Lee would also say.
All right, this next setting here, force Google safe search is set to enabled. I do believe this is something that is enabled by default anyway. Well, of course, we want to keep it this way. So do you know the technicalities? What is safe search? Do you have insight on that?
So if I remember correctly, this is one that I was always glad was enabled when I had kids, to keep them from, bad things popping up on the page. And today in what some, not saying me, would call is a sue happy world, you definitely don't want to accidentally click on something that someone's walking by and your web browser pops up some stuff that doesn't need to or shouldn't be at work, not safe for work type of things. And so and then all of a sudden everybody thinks, and you may get fired, and everybody thinks that you're a pervert or whatnot. So this is one way to protect against that. The other thing is that, which this one does have a little disruptiveness to, is you need to probably go in and do some additional tweaking to this. If you are a doctor's office and you are doing some research on some procedure, it may block certain content to certain websites. So it's always a good idea to do this one with caution and make sure that you go in a little bit further and put the safe sites in there. And this gives you good tabletop exercises to talk to your leadership team to say, hey, we get a lot of this type of site blocked. Let's say, firearms, for example. Is there any reason why we should be blocking firearms? Well, you're a firearm parts manufacturer, so no, probably not. So again, this is a good one to talk to your to use as an MSP, to go talk to your point of contacts, to talk to your clients, and do these tabletop exercises and add that little bit of value that lets them know that you're looking out for their business. So
I like that.
And I got two things I want to add. One, I do not believe this is actually by default. I'm noticing it's a level 2 setting, so I misspoke there. But JP, talking about showing the client and getting them involved. Now, you gave the example, all right? You told a story. In your story, you never said the words Google Safe Search. When you talk to your partners and your customers, do you mention specific configurations, or what? How do you present it to them? Because I can't imagine they'd understand this if they just read it.
I try to keep it high level because most of my clients that I'm speaking with at my level with the QSBRs, the quarterly strategic business reviews, they want things at a very high level to make a decision. That's all they care about. They want to be you. They are A and Z people. They don't care about B through Y. You present them with A. Here's the answer with Z, and they'll say yes or no. They may ask some additional questions in there. Okay, so what's the impact on the bottom line on this one if we do this? How much
They're
disruption?
trusting you as the expert, and they're able to make a quick decision because they know they're getting good advice from you, JP.
Well, that still remains to be seen fully, but at least I'm trying every day.
No, I believe
They
that.
they don't care about B through Y. I love that statement.
That is good.
They do.
That
They
is
want to
the
make a
first time
decision.
I've heard it. Mm-hmm.
I even so and
They're
I'll
worried about B through Y about that's their product, that's their customer service, that's the B through Y. They're worrying about B through Y, but not in relative to these types of things.
This is why I was saying that it's good to have a tabletop exercise with the whole leadership team, and including your executives, your CEOs, your CFOs that are in there with your leadership team, so that they can ask questions, so they can be informed of why they're making the decisions that they are. The B through Y analogy is really strong with CEOs because they care more about making a decision. Present to me why this is even in front of me and why I need to make a decision on this. And that's what I mean for that. They care about it, but they hire their good leadership to help them make that decision. And that's what a good leader does inside of a company. So
perfect.
And, that's one thing, and I'm going to do my best. I got to manage time. We do have about 5 more settings, but when we first started working together, JP, and thank you for being a vocal Senteon supporter here, but you really emphasized reports. You wanted Senteon we had great granular reports. An engineer loves our reports, but you really pushed us to say, that's good, but that gives me 0 value when I need to go show those people who care about A and Z. So you really pushed us as a vendor to really meet your needs. And I was wondering if you could just share a couple minutes. How do you communicate with your vendors, and how do you let them know of things you need and get them to do it?
Just like you guys and any other vendor, and I'm a part of the Tech Degenerates, and small little plug there for them.
They're tagged in the post, so they have a couple plugs.
the idea behind what you're saying is that, well, I just lost my train of thought. That's the byproduct of getting older. Repeat the question again for me real quick. Sorry.
How do you work with vendors to get them the reporting that you need?
Oh, so I like to tell them that there's 2 audiences. It's not just the engineers who you need to speed up their time. So the reports are very important for them. They want to be able to look at something and get some results out of it very quickly. But the high level CEOs, CFOs, and that leadership positions I was talking about, they care about some of that middle ground somewhere. And so, like, one of the reports that you guys had is like, okay, I want to be able to show them that they're, where they're at on that grading thing. But I want to be able to very quickly says, look, if we implement this, here's an A, or here's a B plus, or whatever. And so that was one of the things you guys implemented. And so having those conversations, I think it's advisable for any vendor to have some sort of advisory council. And it to me, that's a level of maturity that you guys have attained by starting to create and listen to some of that stuff. So
you need that macro view for the overall look, and then you need the micro view for the details.
Yes,
absolutely. All right, let's keep on budgeting our time, right? Let's go to this next setting here. So we do have, I think this is notify a user that a browser relaunch or device restart is required or recommended or required. And CIS is saying this needs to be enabled with a recurring prompt to the user to indicate a relaunch is required. So this is not automatically doing it. It does need them to approve the restart. JPR update's important.
I don't even
Don't
know
miss
that
it,
deserves
JP.
a
Don't miss this
restart.
one. You're going to get dropped.
I don't even know that that's a. To me, that would not be a very smart question. And so, but the short answer is yes. They're very important. We see it day in day. You know, the automatic updating is not always a good thing, right? So I've got a lawyer right now who we put our updates on them, we test them out before we throw them out on his machine, but he leaves so many things open that if we were to just restart his computer, it would run his world for at least 24 hours.
You probably lose
And
work too.
yeah, and lose a lot of work. Yeah, so it is this warning page is mandatory with all of our client partners. So
yeah, it's just a reoccurring reminder. Hey, I still need to get this done, right? Even if they're not doing it, it keeps it top of mind.
exactly.
I use on my personal Macintosh computers. I use DuckDuckGo, and they're pushing out updates all the time, and it's really pretty painless. They even open up your past windows when they do it, and it only takes a few minutes. But you know the threat
Yeah.
landscape is so dynamic that you know updates are required on a accelerated rate. So just you know, and also part of the CIS controls, proper patching. So it's very, very important. And JP, you did a nice job. We don't have to drop you. So good on you.
Dylan, shout out to Dylan there with the you jest. So
Yeah, nothing could go wrong.
Oh, I love that. Give that comment a highlight.
no, we've
That's
never
perfect.
seen anything recently that has happened when you push out an update.
No,
So,
that couldn't cause one of the biggest IT outages in history.
yeah.
No, never.
Perfect. All right, let's keep momentum here. So the next one here is ensure proxy settings is set to enabled and does not contain proxy mode auto detect. So this again might be a little technical for the high level audience, but do your best here, JP. What's a high level explanation for this?
If I remember correctly, and again, I'm further removed from the technical side of things, just as a reminder to everybody in the audience. When you enable the ability to have a proxy just automatically be used, it reminds me of an old Wi-Fi attack that we used to use and utilizing the same name and being able to use and go through who's probably logging some threat actor's backpack who's got a pineapple out there. And so same thing here with the Chrome web browser. You don't want to enable this if they go to a website that's redirecting them to another site that has a window that's logging everything that they're doing, and they think they're in a browser, but they're in a browser within a browser type thing. That's the first thing that pops to my head.
That's exactly right. You may
bad,
not be technical, but that is literally the perfect explanation.
Man in the middle.
Yes, very much a man in the middle.
Very good. I honestly, I have nothing to add to that because that was exactly what I was going to summarize as well.
Zach is speechless.
That was just you set the stage like you were going to struggle, but that was perfect explanation.
Well, because I wasn't sure if I was remembering that correctly. So, and I knew I had two other very smart people on the phone and in the audience that would correct me very quickly. So,
at least one in the audience.
The audience can decide if it's Zach or me.
All right, let's go over to this next setting. We got about 10 minutes left. We're making great time. So require online OCSP/CRL checks for local trust anchors is set to enabled. I do want to note this is a level 2 setting, and we did have some pre-show discussion about this one because I had to do some research of my own before this webinar. But JP, what did we learn about this in the pre-show?
That this is really just validating the digital certificates that are out there, and which is good for internal and external use of digital certificates. And I know a lot of I started thinking about this a little bit while y'all were talking about this. There's a lot of self-made digital certificates. This is a way for a non-compromised machine to be able to check this type of a thing, so that it doesn't become compromised. So, I mean, that's my quick and dirty on it. So,
Yep. I mean, the best way for me to explain this setting is it's like you have a party with a specialized guest list. It's effectively checking to make sure every single person is on the guest list without doubt and no negotiation.
I love that analogy. I'm stealing it.
All right. I could drop one piece of knowledge every week, and that'll be worth it. Two if I have two webinars that week. But let's go to this next setting here. So if I do 3 webinars, we'll do 3 knowledge drops. Anyway, the next setting here is set the time period for update notifications is set to enabled, and CIS gives a recommendation, and without commas. I have no idea how long that is, but I imagine that's in seconds or minutes. Rich, maybe you know better than me.
I know.
Okay, hey, there we go. JP, tell us about the setting.
I'm non-technical, but it's about 24 hours.
It's 86.
There we go.
If I do that in my head really fast and look at Henry's notes to the speakers, it's 86.4 minutes.
Wow.
So I think that is all good there. So this again looks like about updates and notifications. So JP, anything to add, or did we cover this good enough?
If it's 86 minutes, then I think it's good.
I misinterpreted Henry. It's 86.4 million seconds, Henry?
I don't know where you're reading, brother, but we could do the Google search later on this one.
If it is 24 hours or once every 24 hours, I think that I would probably that's a standard. That would be a minimum. I might put that at a little more often though.
Yeah,
I think the point here is when updates are required, you need to take care of them in a timely fashion is the idea here.
Yes.
And I'm looking at our private chat again with Henry. That's 1,000 days. Seems like
might have to double check the CIS benchmarks on this one, but I'm sure there's a technicality here. If we were to look at the GPO pathway, this is talking about a very specific area of the update.
It's 24 hours.
All right. Let's move on from here. Updates are important. We can follow up in the comments after the show. The next one here is much more straightforward, and I don't think anyone will debate on this one. Allow web authentication requests on sites with broken TLS certificates is set to disabled. So this is saying we do not allow this. JP, why don't we want broken TLS certs?
Oh, there's a lot of exploits to TLS 1.0, much less other things, and so you don't want any of that stuff. So.
Yeah,
it's all about the safety.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, can you? Again, high level, is there anything you can extra share on what is TLS, certificates, the importance of having these up to date?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about protecting the data that it's on the computer. So there are some vendors out there and some exploits that I know of that can utilize these TLS, these broken links, and grab passwords out of your web browser. And so you don't want that to happen. So one way is to enable to disable the ability to use those websites that could grab your credentials or other data and stuff off of them. So
as we learned in one of our previous sessions to never cache those passwords in your browser.
Yes.
So double protection.
Also true.
I had to remind my sister of that last night, actually. So
I'm working, and my mom is a weekly watcher, so shout out mom, but we were working on her password manager last night. This is Indiana in the background, so I'm not in my dormitory right now at Stanford, but yeah, we will pick up the password manager conversation, I'm sure, after this. All right, very awesome. Let's go into the second to last setting of the day. Oh, and we do have an update from the moderator in the background. That was milliseconds, which would then lead to JP being correct about, I believe, the seconds. So milliseconds, why CIS put it in milliseconds, I don't know. Probably wasn't CIS's fault. That's what Google Chrome asked for. Now, why Google Chrome asked that?
Just murdered that slide, by
the way. All right. 2 more settings here. Sorry, go back a slide here. We don't want to skip that one. So allow reporting of domain reliability related data is set to disabled. So I feel like we want to report reliability data. Why don't we want to share data, JP?
Well, because it's grabbing data it's not supposed to be grabbing.
Oh, there we go.
You don't want to allow it.
What data is it grabbing? Is it your password? Is it company
Or we
information?
just don't
Yes.
Is
know.
it credentials?
You should always assume the worst and protect at that level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, that's the takeaway for this. I know at the OS level, and I'm sure in some of the edge settings we talk about next season, Microsoft wants to collect data. What they do with that data, we don't know.
Nobody knows.
We can always send them that data after something happens. So why
Yes.
do they need it continuously?
And how do they protect that data?
So,
You
Unknown.
don't know.
but it's Microsoft. We trust them. We don't make questions. Anyway, all right.
You're listening.
Last,
Don't question
last.
authority.
Don't question authority. That's right. All right. Last setting of the day. 4 minutes left. Enable TLS encrypted client hello is making sure this is enabled. Client hello. Any idea what this is? Anything you can share on this one?
I'm not as technical on this one, but I think this still has to do with the ability to get inside of that data and how it's going to talk to it. I think this is kind of a well, Rich, why don't you explain it a little more? Maybe we come up with an analogy for it.
All right, I'm going to kind of make it up as I go along here. I think it's really initiating a secure handshake that is encrypted. Yeah. So your machine-to-machine communication is private.
So I mean, think the way I like to explain this setting as well. It's effectively like you're talking in a secret code. If you ever had like a best friend growing up where you had a made up language that only the two of you understood, and there's no way to figure it out. That's how I would explain this one. It's effectively a secret code, a secret language, a secret handshake, and that's how this is. Yes, you are who you say you are. Hence, I will allow this to continue.
That makes me wonder who was the first person to invent Pig Latin and start talking to their friends in Pig Latin. Do you know what Pig Latin is, Zach, or is that another old thing?
That might be. Is that not that's normal Latin? Is there a new movie or book I need to read?
It's just old. Do a YouTube search at some point. You can probably find a rabbit hole on that.
All right. We got 2 more slides, 2 more minutes, but these are going to be storytelling. JP, there was so much I wanted to dive into this episode, but let's show this last one with the MITRE attack techniques. These settings, again, all about mitigating risk. You can see the settings we have, the attack techniques we have listed here. The settings we talked about today will mitigate the risk of these being. Dylan, I can absolutely give it a whirl. It doesn't sound that hard. Latin's easy, right? That's not a extinct language. Anyway, JP, why do we take these preventative measures? Why should an MSP prioritize this? Do meeting the CIS benchmarks actually reduce your risk of a cyber attack?
Yes. I mean, it's like putting up a fence around your house, and each step that you take, especially if you're comparing against the MITRE attack techniques, you're just adding height to that, and extra nails and extra whatever you can.
Yes.
Every little bit helps. I know people talk about layering and you need additional layers, but the analogy of a fence is one of those that we can all relate to very quickly. Of, hey, we're building a fence maybe inside of a fence, and we're putting more stronger hardwood on that fence. We're putting spikes at the top of it. There's all kinds of analogies from this standpoint, but it's all about protecting the data, protecting your end users, and adding that value add like we've kind of demonstrated in some of the previous slides. So,
yep, absolutely. And we did talk about a lot of these attack techniques throughout. We talked about man in the middle, obviously misconfigurations, SSL, so I think we did this slide throughout today's presentation. So let's show one more slide here. JP, this is high level. A lot of the MSPs, a lot of the listeners have never performed hardening. You just kind of shared how much risk it mitigates, but to an MSP who's looking at performing hardening and really getting back to the cybersecurity fundamentals, is there really any advice, anywhere you'd recommend for them to start? Like, they're going to have user pushback for a lot of these settings. Like, where should an MSP looking at hardening really value the most?
I kind of go back to what Matt Lee pushes and what a lot of the security experts push is to have some of these tabletop exercises in your QBRs. and just say, hey, I just want to run through one scenario with you this particular time. They will eventually get to it. At least probably about half of my clients look forward to that additional 30 minutes that we play a tabletop exercise in it. And they'll tell me, hey, what scenario you got for me today? How are we going to resolve this? Type of a thing. So in that, you can touch every one of these different things that we've been talking about as far as what the security and compliance, what you need, and where to start. The CIS, I love how CIS is laid out. It is one that I know a lot of MSPs, a lot of vendors are starting to utilize in just the simplicity of going through it step by step, a little bit at a time. The analogy here that I think of when I'm talking to my clients is they say, well, there's so much to do. I said, there is, but you know what the best way to eat an elephant is? One little bite at a time, and you will get there.
Who's eating elephants? We have a lot of metaphors today. I'm going to have to.
That's another old tech metaphor, bro.
It is.
Sheesh. Maybe I'm in the wrong field, guys. Should I just pack my bags and build something new?
Dude, we're giving you golden nuggets to start utilizing, man.
The marketing reels I make after this are either going to be making fun of me or absolute bangers. Maybe both.
Maybe.
All right. So that concludes the discussion today. We're 1 minute over. JP,
oh my gosh.
I skipped what I said I was going to ask every guest this season. The reoccurring question. Do you have a story of the most interesting or funny place you took a customer phone call? Does anything come to mind?
Yes, but I don't.
Not for a live webinar.
Yeah, not safe for work.
Enough said.
We'll circle back.
I will say I felt much better after I took that call, though.
I think people will put that together. All right, JP, besides for that story, what closing thoughts do you got for us? Is there anything else you want to leave the audience before I wrap up?
Two things. One, find a mentor, even if it's within your own circle of friends, just to hold you accountable. You let them see the list of things and the ideas that you're trying to do and ask them to hold you accountable, number one. Number two would be if you're an MSP, an engineer inside of an MSP, marketing inside of an MSP, anything inside of an MSP, or any business for that matter, start following a framework. The CIS controls are probably one of the easiest, well, let me rephrase that, one of the best ones to get started with, and it applies to all your application, it applies to your network, it applies to your operations. Get started on it right away because you need to get started.
Absolutely. I think the word I would suggest there is comprehensive. It very much dives deep and lets you follow along easily. So amazing closing thoughts. Rich, I'll give you a chance as well. Anything you want to add, or should I move on to wrap up?
I just want to say thanks to JP for popping on. Awesome job. I'd love to do some more work with you, JP. Maybe we can figure out another collaboration. But
sure.
Great job, and looking forward to seeing everyone next week as well. Go ahead.
You guys made it easy for me. Thank you very much. I need that.
Absolutely. All right. We do this weekly every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And let's highlight this slide in full screen for everyone. So next week, we do have Derek Melber coming up, which I'm very excited about. He is a Microsoft MVP, a GPO MVP specifically. So he has quite the internal stories. I'm looking forward to hearing on live on air. Andy Laren, our Canadian friend, coming in the following week. And we got Joe Alapat, who just hosted RoarCon, LionGuard's first in-person conference. So really excited to hear about that and what takeaways he'll share a month after the show. And again, as a reminder to everyone, these episodes are straight onto our YouTube channel to watch the recordings. And if you head over to app.senteon.co, you are welcome to get some free assessments if you input the code SETTINGSWEBINAR. So let me know that you watched and learned about us here. But other than that, echoing Rich, you did great, JP. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the audience.